time for Steve Forbes to focus on being ETSU head men's basketball coach for life. Hi everyone, I'm Marky Bilson. I want to begin this podcast by saying kudos to Eric Ainge. One-time Tennessee Volunteers quarterback. He's been a sports talk show host for some time and recently was rated the 17th best mid-major sports talk show in the country by Barrett Sports Media. And his show was picked up this past week by a former rival station of mine. They used to call into a lot many years ago. Regardless, I made the station as a caller and all that. Half of me believes that. They can make a great argument for that, but this is not about satisfying my ego here. What it is about is that Eric Ainge is now heard in the Tri-Cities, Tennessee market. Again, it was a show that was ranked as one of the top 20 in the country by Barrett Sports Media, at least in mid-major markets, and that would be 21 and down. Okay, top 20 markets are what they consider to be major markets. Anyway, because he was being heard now not only in Knoxville, but also in the Tri-Cities, two medium-sized markets, he was interviewing a couple of ETSU figures, Steve Forbes as well as Randy Sanders. Let's focus on Forbes, the basketball coach, not Sanders, the football coach. The community is just buzzing around here in the Tri-Cities. See a lot of people calling up talk shows. They're on social media. And basically the reason why is Forbes said, I love ETSU. I love it here. He gave glowing praise and so on and so forth. However, and this is very important, before Ainge could ask a follow-up question, he also said, now that doesn't mean that I'm married to ETSU. That wasn't his exact quote, mind you, but what it was a situation where he was like, hey, ETSU is great. Of course, I could be lured away, was essentially the point that he was making. And it's not a surprise. Forbes has interviewed for the New Mexico job as well as the Arkansas job in the past, and you really can't blame Steve Forbes for that. I mean, look, who is going to criticize someone for taking a higher paying job, which may have more exposure? But what I just can't get is that when Forbes puts that caveat, look, I love it here, but, I'm not married to the place. I mean, if an SEC program wanted me or whatever, he didn't come right out and say if an SEC program wanted me. But, if there was a better program out there, it's not like I am not interested in making more money or going to a better school or what, he did leave that out there and make it pretty well known. And so as a result, this buzz of, oh, Steve Forbes loves ETSU, I just really think is sort of the inferiority complex of ETSU, because he is, suggesting, look, I'm not married to this place. And number two, and this also really bothers me, it's how people in the Tri-Cities, Tennessee area can just put their head in the sand over certain things. And, they'll focus in on he said he loved ETSU. He also not married to the place. That's out the window. All right. And as a result, I kind of think that I love ETSU, it just rings a little hollow. And I'll give you an example. Greg Marshall. Of course, Steve Forbes used to work for Greg Marshall at Wichita State. And he quotes Greg Marshall saying, you don't mess with happy. You know what makes Greg Marshall happy? His $3.5 million annual salary at Wichita State. I mean, now Forbes makes $650,000 a year at ETSU, which is a lot of money for a mid-major basketball coach. And I'm going to tell you something. I think Steve Forbes is going to be the ETSU basketball coach for life. I don't even think his tenure at ETSU is at the halfway point. Here are the reasons, and he touched upon some of them in the interview. Yes, part of it is his salary. A couple of years ago, UTEP asked him, hey, would you be interested in coaching at UTEP? And Steve Forbes basically said, no, I wouldn't. You know, you think of UTEP, I mean, years ago they were a national champion way back in 1966. They were called Texas Western back then, but so what, you know. And you start thinking, if they won it then, couldn't they win it again? You know, that sort of thing. But then you start saying UTEP wasn't going to pay Forbes anything demonstratively better, if anything better at all. And also UTEP last won an NCAA tournament game in 1992. Turns out that's the last year ETSU has won an NCAA tournament game as well. If it's not the same program in 2020, it's because ETSU, in my opinion, is actually a better college basketball program than the UTEP Miners are. History be damned. Forbes is going to be 56 next season when the major programs start looking for coaches. That's really looked at as long in the tooth. Basically, if you're over 55 and you are hired as a men's college basketball coach at a major program, you better have done it at a major program before, much like Rick Barnes at Texas and Clemson before he came to Tennessee, or else you're not going to have a whole lot of success. Ben Howland at Pitt and UCLA when he got the Mississippi State job, but that's a lot different than one NCAA tournament appearance at ETSU. A couple other things I think are going to hold Forbes back from getting another job. I mean, obviously, he's not going to go to another mid-major, but in addition to the age, dare I say it, when he snapped at me when I asked him if he played Malayton Artemis with a concussion in the 2019 Southern Conference Tournament. Remember on my show, his assistant coach had said that Artemis had experienced his injury during the game against Wofford. And we've got that up on on the YouTube channel that you can watch and subscribe to. In addition to that, Artemis was transferring away. People are, why is he transferring away? Remember how ETSU closed the practices? They never do that, but they closed the practices that week before the CIT game. It was actually in the notes that Artemis was going to start, and he didn't. He didn't even play. Folks, that's shady. And to hide behind FERPA or to snap at the reporter asking the question is just, look, I mean, if you were an athletic director and you wanted to ask a challenging question of a coach, you want an answer. You don't want, how dare you question my integrity with temper. So, it should be mentioned that ETSU, they've lost some men's basketball coaches before to major programs. But generally speaking, it's been to the coach's alma mater. Ed DeChillis in 2003 went to Penn State, and Les Robinson in 1990 went to NC State. You got to go back to 1978 when Sonny Smith, who was from the area, Roan Mountain, left to go to Auburn. At the time, ETSU had more NCAA tournament appearances than Auburn did. That's something to consider. But, it's not impossible that a coach over 55 will get a job at a major program. For instance, Mike Young, who left Wofford, Southern Conference rival of ETSU, to go to Virginia Tech. But, Young didn't have a great year at Virginia Tech. They were 500 after 4 straight 20-victory seasons. Young was also going back to Southwest Virginia. He was a Southwest Virginia native. So even though Wofford had a nice season where they were nationally ranked and they won an NCAA tournament game and would have beaten Kentucky if Fletcher McGee hadn't laid an egg in the game, well, would he have gotten Young a head coaching job at a place that wasn't in the area in which he grew up in? That's the question. Could he have gotten the job at, UCLA or Arizona State or just, wherever? I mean, Boston College or something. You know, could it? Probably not. Now, we can always speculate. I mean, if Forbes, who's an Iowa native, let's say Iowa State, which was 12-20 this past year, let's say they continue to slump, and next year ETSU makes the NCAA tournament. And so the statements that Forbes made about the ETSU community, and he doesn't like airline travel, throw those out the window. You know, the warmer weather of Tennessee is compared to Iowa. No, I'm going back home if he wants to, you know. But then, if the Cyclones decided to fire their coach, who would have 4 years left on his contract, it's Steve Forbes, and then the Cyclones said that they wanted to go the same direction that they did when they hired Forbes as they were firing him, if all of this happens, because Forbes came from Murray State. Mid-major, successful program, in the South. I mean, you know, there's a big idea here that in that situation, you bring in Steve Forbes, that sounds like another Forbes. Why didn't you just keep him if that's what you were doing, you know? And if Iowa State was willing to take a chance on a coach who was 56 years old, when, statistically speaking, coaches not from major programs with a legacy of success who are hired when they're more than 55 years old are generally not that successful in today's major college basketball. If all of that stuff happened, then maybe, yes, you could see Steve Forbes leaving for his native Iowa and Iowa State. Then again, you go to Iowa State, you're always going to be in that conference, you know, even no matter how good you are, you're going to be number 2 behind Kansas. You know, let's fit. But don't you see that's a lot of ifs? And that's good for ETSU. You know, in the Tri-Cities, the veteran fans, they remember the glory days of Mr. Jennings and Greg Dennis in the 1990s. They've always dreamed of ETSU returning to the top 25. ETSU has never been ranked in the top 25 except for 1991. It hasn't happened in the interim, didn't happen before then, when it was top 20 or top 10 or what have you. I do think that Steve Forbes could really stay at ETSU for all the reasons I just gave you for another, say, 10 years and really develop the Buccaneers into a basketball powerhouse, one that is nationally ranked, one that's more major than mid. Oh, yeah. And for the reasons, the glowing reasons that Forbes gave about ETSU. On the ETSU job, he has made this into a really good position for himself. But here's what he didn't say in the interview with Eric Ainge. He didn't say he was committed to making ETSU into the next Gonzaga, and potential suitors be damned. Now, I realize that might seem like a sacrifice to a lot of people. You know, oh boy, that's, you know, you'd be turning down a lot of money if you did that. But here's the deal. I'm not sure Forbes is ever going to get one of those positions. I really am not. And as a result, even if you went to Iowa State, I'm just throwing Iowa State, you know, what do you really expect to do there? At this stage of his career, his best chance of making a mark in the college basketball world is probably developing ETSU into a powerhouse program, much the way similar mid-majors we saw Dayton, for instance, this past season. I'm Marky Bilson. If you like this video, I'm asking you to go to YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube right now, and hit the bell, click the subscribe button, you know, all this, more than 1,000 videos, including a lot of Southern Conference videos, a lot of ETSU videos, a lot of Tri-Cities videos to watch. If you're one of my buddies from Pittsburgh or something, I've got a Pittsburgh channel. I got a lot of playlists out there, NASCAR, baseball, you name it, football. It's all there, and a lot of my commentaries and a lot of my, not only these podcasts, but the archives of my former sports talk show as well, dating back really to the extent of the show. More than 1,000 segments there for you to enjoy. I'm sure that you will find something that you like. Putting up new content all the time. So, follow me on Medium, follow me on YouTube, Twitter, the whole 9 yards, and thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Marky Bilson.